This story takes place when I was 9 years old. I am now nearly 25. I was at my great-grandfather's home in Horizon during Christmas break, visiting family and so forth. This also marked the first year my mother, her partner, joined us as my parents had divorced the previous summer. My great-grandfather lived in a small native community numbering approximately 1,000 people. His house was a simple 2-story home, located on wide fields and surrounded by forest. It was a beautiful house and property, and I miss it very much. Anyway, about a day after we arrived, my aunt, uncle, and cousins who lived in the same town as us surprised us by driving 10 hours to visit as well, after having at first told us they would not be able to do to work. It was fun because at the time my cousins and I were close. One night my uncle, my stepfather, and my cousin who lived just next door to my great-grandfather came over and visited with everyone. The adults began taking part in grown-up talk, so my cousins Sam, who was 9, Evan, who was 12, and Clara, who was 10, and I decided to go downstairs to the basement and play our monster game. The way this game was played was that Sam and Evan would be the monsters, and they would hide down in the basement with the lights completely off. Then Clara and I would have to find them. They would make noises, so we could have relatively easy access to locate them, but not fully. Then if we got near them, they would make monster noises and chase Clara and me, and we had to return to the top of the stairs, which was our safe zone. I know it was a somewhat silly game, thinking about it now, but at the time it was quite scary but genuinely fun. Anyway, Sam and Evan went downstairs to hide, and they told us to wait 2 minutes before going down to begin searching for them. Clara and I waited upstairs for 2 minutes, and then we went downstairs to find Sam, and Evan Clara went down first, and we started looking for them. We just did our normal routine for this game. It was completely pitch black downstairs. The only light down there was from the pellet stove and the moon shining through the window. Although we knew it was just our cousins hiding, it was still pretty scary, simply because it was utterly dark and completely silent. About 5 minutes later, Sam and Evan jumped out and scared us, and then they chased us. We went back upstairs and decided to play another round. We followed our normal routine by waiting for 2 minutes, then heading downstairs. This time I went first. As we went downstairs, we heard Evan or Sam hit the wall, which made me jump. We continued walking down when I noticed a figure standing outside the window. I stopped walking and extended my hand to stop Clara. She became a little annoyed and said, "Come on, why are you stopping?" I did not say anything, but I pointed towards the window, showing her the figure. Clara noticed the figure. Then she whispered, "Sam, Evan, we need you to stop the game. There is someone standing outside." Surprisingly, Sam answered to us. I figured he would have wanted to continue the game and not say anything. He said, "You guys are lying. You are just scared." I was starting to get upset because they would not believe us. "Guys, seriously, look at the window above the TV." Then we saw Sam and Evan come out from underneath the ping-pong table my great-grandfather had for us, and they looked up. Evan just laughed a little and called us out, saying, "It is probably Uncle George just outside smoking." I knew it was not my Uncle George because he always smoked outside, on the front porch, right by the front door. I then told Evan that Sam then said, very annoyed, "Then it is probably Grandpa, just checking out the house, because you know him. He is always checking to see if the house has any problems. If you guys are worried about it, then go upstairs and check." I then went upstairs to check, but I acted that I was just looking for something. I went into the living room, and everyone I knew that was there were all in the living room. It was not my Uncle George, nor my great-grandfather, or anybody. Everyone was sitting in the living room. My stomach dropped. There was definitely someone out there. I did not want to tell the adults because I was worried they would not believe me. I went back downstairs shaking, and I told them, "Guys, everyone is in the living room. No one is missing. There is someone out there." Sam and Evan finally realized this was not a joke, and their playful looks turned into scared looks. Clara began to cry a little. I told her not to make too much noise. We all went to the top of the stairs to figure out what we should do. Of course, Sam and Evan were coming up with silly ideas like shooting the guy or something. We did not want to tell the adults, so we just stayed at the top for 5 minutes. Then we went back down. When we were back down, the figure was gone. We thought that the figure just left and went their way. We decided we did not want to play the game anymore, so we would just play ping pong instead. We turned the light onto the basement, and when they came on, we noticed the window was slightly open. I thought to myself, was the window slightly open this whole time? I looked towards the furniture, and my heart suddenly dropped. There was a man in his mid-40s sitting in one of the sofa chairs staring at us. We were so scared that we just stood there frozen. The guy began smiling all creepily at us. He then began to stand, and then I yelled, "Run!" We ran up the stairs and slammed the door to the basement. Then we ran into the living room, crying to our family that there was a man downstairs. One of my uncles, who was a police officer, went and grabbed one of my great-grandfather, her guns, and headed downstairs. My uncle came back up after a few minutes and said there was no one down there, so we thought he climbed back out the window and ran. The adults believed us when we said there was someone down there, because outside there were footprints in the snow, and they led to my great-grandfather, her driveway. Nothing was stolen downstairs, so that was good. We were all so scared that we just sat with our moms and hugged them. That night when we went to bed, I was still afraid, so I slept in bed with my mom. My cousins and I have not played that game since my great-grandfather was pretty upset because he thought his windows could not be opened from the outside. But he was glad that my cousins and I were not hurt. My great-grandfather passed away in October of 2017, and I miss that man very much. But ever since that event, I have always been afraid of going into any basement by myself, even as I have gotten older. Although I have not been back to my great-grandfather, her in almost a year, I still am scared of that basement or any basement to this day. It was nearing Halloween. We were in the middle of October. My cousin Leo, her birthday is October 15th. So for his 12th birthday, we all gathered at our Uncle David and Aunt Maria, her house, as they were hosting a family birthday celebration for him. We have a rather large family, so our family gatherings can often become quite noisy. It was still warm outside, so the party was mostly held in the backyard. Their house is quite big, and we always enjoyed playing hide-and-seek type games because of it. Leo and I are the same age. My older brother Sam is 2 years my senior. He would play with us too. Our other cousins were a little older, but they would still join in. We would simply form teams and take turns as hiders and seekers, establishing time limits to locate the opposing hiding team. If you were discovered, you had a chance to sprint outside to the backyard to be safe, provided you managed not to be tagged. We were permitted to use the entire house, excluding our aunt, her and uncle, their bedroom. And I am not exaggerating when I say there were hundreds of places to hide oneself. In the basement, there is a separate room that we fondly called Aunt Maria, her fashion room. She is a clothing designer, and inside it, she keeps a collection of mannequins, dressed with various pieces of clothing she has designed. Some are full-body mannequins, others are just torsos without heads resting on regular stands. She also has some studio lights, professional camera equipment, and a green screen backdrop. We had been playing the game for a while already. Sam and I were now hiding. We both opted to hide in the basement. Sam concealed himself somewhere in the main section of the basement, while I hid myself in the fashion room. I actually grabbed 2 blankets from the ottoman in the basement and brought them into the fashion room, one for me to hide under, and the other I intended to throw over one of the mannequins as a decoy, with the blanket draped over it. It genuinely looked like it could be a person hiding underneath. I thought it would be a funny little gotcha moment whenever someone yanked the sheet off of it. So I got into my hiding position under a desk in the corner of the room, and I hid under the blanket. Now, it was a waiting game, which honestly made up a significant portion of the game, if your hiding spot was good. After quite a long time, I heard noise outside in the main room of the basement, as Sam and one of my cousins were laughing and yelling, presumably as Sam was being chased around the basement. I then heard them stomping up the stairs by the sound of it. Sam was trying to make it to the yard without being tagged, but after that I waited in silence for over 10 minutes, easily. I was getting uncomfortable in this position and quite honestly bored. Finally, Sam came downstairs into the room and called my name, and then he said the food was being served outside, so the game was over. I was starving. I hurriedly rushed upstairs into the backyard, where all the catered food was now laid out and being served. At some point after eating and talking with Aunt Maria, I remembered that I had completely left those 2 blankets in her fashion room. Most importantly, I had left one draped over her mannequin, which she would not be pleased about. So after going to the restroom, I went back down to the basement and to the fashion room, where I turned on the light and saw that the blanket was no longer on that mannequin, but rather the blanket was covering something else. It appeared to be another mannequin, though this one seemed to be propped in a seated position, which I was not aware of any mannequins that were in a seated position. The closer I got, I started to realize that it was moving, and I heard breathing. On top of that, there was this strange smell that was not there before. There was a person under there, but who I laughed and said, "Who is that?" They did not answer. I felt this feeling of nervousness growing in my stomach. I looked down to see if I could see the shoes they were wearing, but what I saw was the bare feet of a dark-skinned person. Nobody at this party was of African descent. I turned and headed for the door. I rushed back outside and said to my uncle, "Call the police. There is someone in the basement." Others overheard me and panic quickly started. My uncle and a few others rushed down to the basement. I followed behind. When we got to Aunt Maria, her fashion room, the blanket was now on the floor and whoever was underneath it was gone. I swore up and down someone was just underneath it, explaining the bare feet and the smell. A bunch of family members searched the whole house, and ultimately my uncle called the police, taking my claims very seriously. When the police showed up, it was quite a scene, and everyone at the party was concerned. Neighbors even came out to see if everything was okay. Every possible hiding place was checked, and no one was in the house. I did not make up it, though. What I saw was real, and I just wish he had turned up so that everyone would have seen. I was right. Even if mostly everyone did believe me, I still just wanted them to see what I saw for themselves. During parties, they leave the doors unlocked, since family is circulating in and out for hours. So it is no shocker that someone off the street could have just walked right in. Maybe a homeless person, which would account for the smell. The whole thing still just felt so crazy, and it is a scary memory for sure. When I was a child, I had an unreasonable fear of our basement, though, if I do say so myself, our basement was somewhat frightening for a youngster. It was a rather large cellar. An L-shaped sofa sat precisely in the middle of the basement, directly in front of a wooden support column. In front of the sofa was the large old television we kept down there, to which all our video game consoles were connected. The layout of the basement formed a large circle that surrounded the sofa. There was a booth and table in one corner, an old bar in another, which had the door to the laundry room behind it, and then in the other corner, closest to the stairs, was the doorway to my father, his small workout room. My father rented out the upstairs of the house to an elderly lady named Eleanor, so we only had access to the first floor and the basement. My father would usually spend time in the living room on the first floor. That's why our video games were all downstairs on the less than ideal television, because our dad did not really go to that area. I am the youngest sibling with 2 older brothers. I was anywhere from 6 to 8 years old when this happened. My older brothers were not home, so they must have been having playtimes with other children. It was just my mother and I at home at the time. My father was likely at work. Usually I would be playing video games with my brothers in the basement, so I would not be scared, but since I was alone, I remember feeling somewhat nervous as I walked down the stairs. That basement door was tricky because it would not stay open by default. It would just slowly creak shut unless something was put in front of it to keep it open. So it just made me feel even more isolated from the upstairs. And my mom, I was playing whatever old video games I was into at the time, alone on that gray fluffy couch. Any little sound in the basement would make me pause my game and look in whichever direction I heard it. There would always be creepy sounds that would come from the laundry room. and even though I grew to expect them, they would still sometimes creep me out. They were usually familiar sounds though, and so when I heard an unusual sound come from inside the laundry room, I paused my game. It was not the sound of the washing machine or the boiler clanking. It was the sound of something dropping to the floor and bouncing once or twice. I remember jumping off the couch and running upstairs to find my mom saying, "There is someone in the basement." And I remember my mom, her calm reaction asking me what happened, and then explaining to me that nobody was down there. To make me feel better, she went back down to the basement with me, and she opened the door to the laundry room, turned on the light, and looked inside for a few seconds. Then she shut the door and said, "There is no one in there." So naturally I felt better, and she went back upstairs, and I went back to playing video games. I cannot recall how much time passed before I went back upstairs to eat a snack. My mom was already preparing dinner. I remember it being dark out now, which only added to my fear of the basement. The basement had 2 small windows, which did allow some light in during the day, so at night it was just completely pitch black down there. I did end up going back down there though, and then eventually I heard the sound of the heater in the laundry room turn on. Only it was extremely loud. I turned around and noticed the laundry room door was now open. I got off the couch and slowly walked to the laundry room door. It was pitch black inside of there. I was scared to turn on the light. I just wanted to shut the door. I gathered up enough courage to run at the door and slam it shut, and then run back to the couch. For some reason I just felt safer on the couch, I guess. For whatever reason, I did not once think that it was strange, that the door was magically open now, even after my mom had closed it earlier. The next thing I remember was hearing a man, his voice from behind me. And at first my brain did not register what I just heard. It did not seem real. I turned around and saw some sick-looking man sitting in the booth in the corner of the basement with his arm on the table and his head resting on his fist. He said, "My, how you have grown." I was frozen stiff. I could not even scream. I just looked at the man in the corner with my mouth hanging open, twitching. He slowly stood up in this crooked, hunched-over posture, and it seemed like he was slowly starting to walk towards me as he said, "Your mother will not let me see you guys." I finally was able to scream, and I just ran for the stairs. I was screaming. "Mom!" The whole way up to the kitchen, I slammed the basement door and locked it. I screamed and cried to my mom that there was a man downstairs. I saw the look on her face, and she was terrified. She called emergency services, and I, strangely, do not remember what happened in the moments before the police showed up. I just remember a bunch of police officers getting there and going down to the basement. I was with my mom and a police officer in a safe room, while they located him, and the man they found was my uncle. My distant uncle, my mom, her brother, who was basically cut off from our family for being a child abuser. Our parents never wanted him anywhere near us, nor did my mom want any contact with him. He broke into the house and had been hiding in the basement. For God knows how long I did not even know his face. As the last time I had seen him, I was a baby. I have not seen him since then. He went back to prison for another 4 years, for another crime. We do not know where he is now.